Have you ever felt like you're stuck playing second fiddle in your own family? Like no matter how much you achieve, you're still not the star? That's my story, and it's a wild ride. I'm Claire Bennett, 32, a software engineer killing it in Chicago, Illinois. I've got a sleek apartment in the Loop, a career building apps that millions use, and a savings account I've poured my heart into since my first paycheck. But to my parents, Linda and Mark Bennett, I'm just a shadow next to my sister, Vanessa. Vanessa's 35, married straight out of college at 23, with two perfect kids, a boy and a girl, and a sprawling 4-bedroom house in Oak Park, a leafy suburb, just 10 miles from downtown. She's their golden girl, the one who nailed the American dream: husband, kids, a Pinterest-worthy kitchen. My parents can't stop singing her praises. Me? I'm the misfit, single, no kids, and apparently a letdown. For choosing code over cribs. It's been this way since we were kids. Growing up in our cozy Evanston split level, Vanessa was the cheerleader, the valedictorian, the one mom and dad bragged about at the neighborhood block party. I was the nerdy kid tinkering with my laptop or devouring fantasy novels in the attic. At 4th of July cookouts, they'd gush over Vanessa's engagement, her baby showers, her PTA fundraisers, while my latest app hitting the App Store's top charts got a half-hearted, "Good job, Claire." Then came the classic jab: "When are you going to settle down?" Vanessa's kids could use some cousins. That Midwestern blend of hope and guilt always cut deep. I'd force a smile, grab another slice of pie, and shove the pain down, but last week, they didn't just poke at old wounds, they dropped a wrecking ball. They called me over to their house, a tidy brick ranch with a basketball hoop in the driveway and a fridge stocked with casseroles. I braced for the usual: pot roast, small talk, and a nudge about my single status. Instead, they ambushed me. Vanessa's been drowning in her $2,800 a month mortgage since her husband's landscaping business went bust. Their big fix? They wanted me to pay it. Every single dime. "You've got that tech salary," Mom said, her voice sharp as a knife. "You can handle it." I was speechless. My jaw hit the floor. I love Vanessa, but I've got my own life, $2,100. Rent, car payments, a retirement fund I'm trying to grow. Why was her mortgage my problem? I steadied my voice and said, "No, I can't do that." That's when it blew up. Dad slammed his beer on the table. "You're selfish, Claire. Family steps up." Mom piled on, "We raised you. You owe us." I bolted, tears streaming, my hands shaking as I drove back to the city. Then came the knockout punch. The next morning, a certified letter showed up at my door. My heart sank as I tore it open. My parents were suing me for $380,000, claiming I owe them for raising me, and that it's my responsibility to save Vanessa's house. Suing me. Their own daughter. I stood there, the paper trembling in my hands, feeling like my entire world had been flipped upside down. Now, I'm fighting back, against the lawsuit, the guilt trips, the lifetime of being second best. This isn't just about money. It's about my freedom, my choices, my right to live my life. How did my family turn into my enemy? What's their next move? And can I hold my ground against the people who brought me into this world? Buckle up, this story's just getting started, and you won't believe how it unfolds. The air in my Chicago apartment felt heavy after that disastrous dinner at my parents' house in Evanston. I tossed and turned all night, replaying Mom's words, "You can handle it," and Dad's fist hitting the table. I couldn't shake the image of Vanessa, my golden sister, sitting silent while they demanded I pay her $2,800 a month mortgage. I loved her, sure, but this felt like a betrayal dressed up as family duty. Still, I pushed it aside, hoping it was a one-off, a desperate moment they'd rethink by morning. I was wrong. The real storm was brewing, and it started with Vanessa's perfect life falling apart. It was late 2024 when Vanessa's world cracked open. Her husband, Greg, a landscaper who'd built a decent business in Naperville, got hit hard when a major client went bankrupt, leaving him with $80,000 in unpaid invoices. He started drinking, staying out late, and by spring, Vanessa found out. He'd been hiding foreclosure notices for their 4-bedroom house on a quiet cul-de-sac. The bank was circling, ready to repossess. When she confronted him, Greg didn't fight, he just left. No goodbye, no child support, just a post-it on the fridge: "I can't do this." Vanessa was left with their 2 kids, Ethan and Mia. both under 10, and a stack of bills she couldn't pay on her part-time gig as a preschool aide. They moved into a dingy one-bedroom apartment in Cicero, a gritty suburb west of Chicago. The place had thin walls, a leaky faucet, and a radiator that clanked like a dying engine. Ethan and Mia shared a pull-out couch in the living room, their toys stuffed into plastic bins. My parents, Linda and Mark, called it heartbreaking but didn't open their wallets. Their savings were tied up in a 401k and a home equity loan they'd taken to remodel their kitchen years ago. "We're stretched thin," Mom said over coffee, her voice thick with worry. "Vanessa's trying so hard." I nodded, feeling the familiar pang of being the reliable one, the one they assumed could fix everything. I didn't hesitate to help. Vanessa was my sister, and those kids, Ethan with his gap-toothed grin, Mia with her love for drawing, deserved better. I wired $15,000 to her divorce lawyer to get the paperwork moving fast. I covered a year's rent for the Cicero apartment, $1,600 a month, $19,200 total, because Vanessa's $12 an hour job couldn't keep the lights on. I bought the kids new backpacks, winter coats, and a tablet so they could do homework without sharing a cracked phone. On weekends, I'd drive 15 miles to take them to Six Flags Great America, letting Vanessa catch her breath or pick up extra shifts. Once, I even paid $2,500 to fix her car's transmission when it died on the Kennedy Expressway. I kept receipts but never mentioned them. This wasn't a loan, it was love. Vanessa wasn't used to needing help. She'd always been the sister with the perfect Instagram grid, the one who sent holiday cards with embossed snowflakes. Now, she looked hollow, her eyes red from crying, her voice soft when she said, "I don't know how to thank you, Claire." I hugged her, told her family sticks together, and meant it. But deep down, I hoped my parents would see me, not just as the bank, but as the daughter who showed up. I wanted Mom to say, "Claire, you're a rock," or Dad to clap my shoulder and mean it. Instead, Mom's calls were all about Vanessa's tragic life, her poor babies, and then, without fail, "Have you met anyone special yet, Claire?" Like my help was expected, my life an afterthought. I told myself it was fine. I'd keep helping, keep being the sister who didn't let Ethan and Mia go without. But the weight of it grew. Every time I checked my savings, money I'd scraped together for a down payment on a condo in Wicker Park, it was a little smaller. I'd been saving for 6 years, dreaming of a place with big windows and a view of the skyline. Helping Vanessa felt right, but it came at a cost, and not just dollars. It was the slow realization that my family didn't see my sacrifices. They saw my paycheck, my single status, and assumed I owed them. Then came the call that changed everything. It was a Tuesday, gray and cold, the kind of Chicago day where the wind cuts through your coat. Mom's voice was too bright, like she was selling something. "Claire, we've got amazing news. Can you come to Evanston tonight? It's about Vanessa." My stomach twisted. Was Greg back? Had Vanessa found a better job? "Is it the kids?" I asked, gripping my phone. "No, even better," she said, almost giggling. "Just come. We're all here, Dad, Vanessa, everyone." I hung up, uneasy. That fake cheer in her voice wasn't joy, it was a trap. I didn't know then that I was walking into a moment that would tear my family apart and push me to a breaking point I never saw coming. What did they want now? And how much more could they take? That Tuesday evening, as I drove from my Chicago apartment to my parents' house in Evanston, the knot in my stomach tightened with every mile. Mom's overly cheerful voice on the phone, "Amazing news, Claire," echoed in my head, but it felt wrong, like the fake smile of a used car salesman. I'd already shelled out $15,000 for Vanessa's divorce lawyer, $19,200 for a year's rent on her Cicero apartment, and thousands more for her kids' clothes, school supplies, and car repairs. I loved my sister and her kids, Ethan and Mia. But the weight of being the family's ATM was crushing me. My savings for a Wicker Park condo were dwindling, and my parents, Linda and Mark, hadn't so much as thanked me. Still, I told myself to stay calm. Maybe this was good news. Maybe Vanessa had landed a job, or her deadbeat ex, Greg, had been tracked down for child support. I clung to that hope as I pulled into their driveway, the familiar brick ranch glowing under the porch light. Inside, the scene was staged like a bad TV drama. Mom sat on the couch, her hands clasped too tightly, a forced smile plastered on her face. Dad lounged in his recliner, a beer in hand, looking smug. Vanessa perched next to Mom, her eyes fixed on the carpet, her usual Instagram-perfect poise. Replaced by a nervous fidget. On the coffee table, polished to a shine, sat a glossy black folder embossed with a real estate logo. "There's our girl," Dad said, standing to give me a quick, awkward hug before thrusting the folder into my hands. "Take a look at this, Claire. It's big." I opened it, my fingers brushing the crisp pages. Inside were photos of a stunning 5-bedroom house in Wilmette, a ritzy North Shore suburb where millionaires and lawyers lived. The listing boasted hardwood floors, a gourmet kitchen, and a backyard big enough for a pool. Attached was a mortgage contract for $950,000. My heart skipped. "What is this?" I asked, my voice steady but thin. Mom clapped her hands, her eyes gleaming. "It's Vanessa's new home. We used our retirement savings and took out a second mortgage on this house for the down payment. It's perfect for the kids, great schools, a real yard, a fresh start after everything she's been through." I glanced at Vanessa, who gave a small, tight nod but said nothing. Her silence screamed louder than any words. "That's amazing," I said, forcing enthusiasm. "Ethan and Mia will love it." I started to hand the folder back, but Mom pushed it toward me again. "No, honey, that's for you to keep." I froze. "For me? What do you mean?" Dad cleared his throat, leaning forward, his beer bottle clinking on the table. "We've talked it over as a family, Claire. You're going to take over the mortgage. It's $5,500 a month. You've got that fancy tech job, no kids, no husband. Vanessa can't swing it, not with her preschool job." The room spun. My mouth went dry, like I'd swallowed sand. "You're asking me to pay $66,000 a year for Vanessa's house?" I said, my voice rising despite my effort to stay calm. Mom's smile didn't waver, but her tone turned syrupy, patronizing. "Claire, sweetheart, we raised you. We sacrificed everything, your braces, your summer camps, this roof over your head. Vanessa's kids need stability. You're in a position to help." Vanessa finally looked up, her eyes red, her voice barely a whisper. "I'm drowning, Claire. Greg left me with nothing. I can't give Ethan and Mia what they deserve without this." I clutched the folder so hard the edges crumpled. "I've already given you $15,000 for your lawyer," I said, my voice shaking. $19, $200 for your rent, $2,500 for your car. I've been saving for 8 years for my own place, a condo I might never afford now because I've been bailing you out." Dad's face hardened, his jaw tight. "You don't have a family to support, Claire. You've got no responsibilities. Stop acting like this is a hardship." Mom reached for my hand, her touch cold. "We've done so much for you. Isn't it time you gave back?" The air felt like it had been sucked out of the room. Every eye was on me, Mom's pleading, Dad's accusing, Vanessa's desperate. I stood, my legs unsteady, the folder still in my hands. "You bought a $950,000 house you knew Vanessa couldn't afford, and you just assumed I'd cover it," I said, my voice cracking. "This isn't help. This is manipulation. You're trying to guilt me into throwing my life away." Dad scoffed, rolling his eyes. "Don't be so dramatic. It's just money." Vanessa's voice broke through. Soft but sharp. "You've always been fine on your own, Claire. I'm not. Please." I looked at her, the sister I'd loved, the one I'd sacrificed for, and felt something snap inside me. "No," I said, the word heavy, final. I dropped the folder on the table, pages spilling across the wood. "I'm not doing this." Mom gasped, her hand flying to her chest. "Claire, how could you?" Dad stood, his face red. "You're turning your back on family." I didn't wait for more. I grabbed my coat and walked out, the door slamming behind me, their voices fading into the cold Chicago night. As I drove back to the city, my hands shook on the wheel, tears blurring the streetlights. I thought that was the worst of it. I thought they'd back off, realize how insane their demand was. But I was naive. That night was just the spark. The fire was coming, and it would burn hotter than I ever imagined. What would they do next? And how much more could I take before I broke? The drive back to my Chicago apartment that night felt like escaping a war zone. My parents' words, Dad's, "You're selfish," and Mom's, "You owe us," looped in my head like a bad song. I'd stormed out of their Evanston house after they demanded I pay Vanessa's $5,500 a month mortgage on a $950,000 Wilmette mansion they'd bought without asking me. I'd already given $15,000 for her divorce lawyer, $19,200 for a year's rent in Cicero, $2,500 for her car, and countless smaller sums for her kids, Ethan and Mia. I loved my sister, but their plan to make me foot the bill for her dream home wasn't love, it was a shakedown. I thought saying no would end it. I thought they'd see how absurd it was, maybe even apologize. I was dead wrong. The fallout hit like a Midwest blizzard, fast, cold, and relentless. By Thursday, the family group chat I'd muted months ago exploded. My cousin Brian, a car salesman in Joliet who hadn't called me since our grandpa's funeral, fired the first shot. Heard you're leaving Vanessa high and dry, Claire. Those kids are your blood. What's your deal? I stared at my phone, my coffee going cold. Brian didn't know I'd paid for Vanessa's lawyer or kept her apartment lights on. Before I could respond, Aunt Susan, Mom's sister from Schaumburg, called during my lunch break. Claire, you're breaking your parents' hearts, she said, her voice dripping with that church lady judgment. Vanessa's a single mom. You're sitting on all that tech money, no kids, no mortgage. Why won't you help? I tried explaining. Susan, I've already given $36,700, rent, legal fees, clothes for the kids. I'm not a bank. She cut me off. Family doesn't keep score. Vanessa would do it for you. I nearly choked. Vanessa, who'd never once offered to chip in for Mom's birthday gift, would bail me out. You don't know the whole story, I said, my voice tight. She huffed. I know enough. You're letting those babies suffer. Click. She hung up, leaving me staring at my cubicle wall, my sandwich untouched. Then the social media pile-on began. Vanessa's best friend, Kelly, a Pilates instructor with a massive Instagram following, posted a cryptic story. Some people have everything but give nothing. #Family Matters. The comments were brutal, strangers calling me heartless, greedy, even a disgrace to Chicago. I didn't follow Kelly, but coworkers did, and by Friday, whispers followed me at the office. Is Claire the one from that post? A junior dev muttered in the break room. My cheeks burned. I deleted my Instagram, but screenshots kept coming, shared by distant cousins, old high school friends, even my former youth pastor. Claire, we're praying you'll do the right thing, his message read. Praying for what? That I'd bankrupt myself for a house Vanessa couldn't afford. The worst was Uncle Dave, Dad's brother, who left a voicemail Saturday night. Claire, I'm disappointed, he slurred, clearly a few beers deep. Your parents gave you a good life, private school, that fancy college. Now you're too good to help your sister? You're no better than Greg, running out on family. I played it 3 times, each word a knife. Greg, the deadbeat who'd abandoned Vanessa and her kids, was now my equal because I wouldn't pay $66,000 a year for her mortgage? I blocked his number, my hands shaking, but the messages kept coming. Texts from a second cousin in Peoria, you're selfish. An email from a family friend, Vanessa's kids deserve better. A Facebook post from Mom's book club. Please support Vanessa in her time of need. What stung most wasn't the insults, it was the certainty. They all believed I owed Vanessa because I was single, childless, and successful. My life, my savings, my dreams of a Wicker Park condo, they didn't matter. I was just a piggy bank, and saying no made me the villain. I stopped sleeping, my phone buzzing day and night with notifications I couldn't mute fast enough. At work, I faked smiles, but my code reviews were sloppy, my focus shot. I'd given Vanessa everything I could, but now I was the family pariah. Painted as a cold, career-obsessed loner who'd turned her back on poor Vanessa and her innocent kids. The final blow came at a Sunday brunch I couldn't skip, a team-building event at a River North cafe. My phone lit up with a text from my childhood friend, Megan, who I hadn't seen in years. Claire, I just talked to your mom at church. How could you do this to Vanessa? She's crying every day, and those kids are sleeping on a couch. I dropped my mimosa, the glass clinking loudly enough to turn heads. Megan didn't know I'd paid for that couch, that apartment, that divorce. Mom had spun a story, and Megan bought it wholesale. You've got it wrong, I typed, my fingers trembling. I've helped more than you know. Her reply was instant. Then why's your family falling apart? Do better. I excused myself to the bathroom, locked the stall, and cried, silent. Ugly sobs that left mascara streaks on my cheeks. That night, I sat on my apartment balcony, the Chicago skyline glittering but offering no comfort. I blocked Megan, Aunt Susan, Brian, and half a dozen others. My phone felt like a bomb, every ping a new explosion. I thought about calling Vanessa, begging her to tell the truth, that I'd given her $36,700, that I'd babysat Ethan and Mia, that I'd sacrificed my own goals. But I didn't. Her silence at that dinner, her whispered, "I'm drowning," told me she was complicit. She wasn't fighting for me, she was letting Mom and Dad weaponize her struggle. I poured a glass of wine, stared at Lake Michigan's dark expanse, and tried to find peace. I thought I'd hit rock bottom, that the worst was over. But I was naive. The real betrayal was coming, and it would shake me to my core. My family wasn't done, they were just getting started, and their next move would push me to a place I never thought I'd go. What could be worse than this? And how much more could I endure before I lost myself completely? The weeks after the family backlash felt like wading through quicksand. My Chicago apartment, once a sanctuary, became a cage where every buzz of my phone brought a new attack. Cousins, aunts, even strangers on social media called me selfish for refusing to pay Vanessa's $5,500 a month mortgage on a $950,000 Wilmette house my parents, Linda and Mark, had bought without my consent. I'd already given $15,000 for her divorce lawyer, $19,200 for her Cicero apartment rent, $2,500 for her car, and more for her kids, Ethan and Mia. But to my family, I was the villain, single, childless, and therefore obligated to bankroll their dreams. I blocked numbers, avoided family events, and threw myself into work, but the weight of their judgment was crushing. I thought I'd seen the worst. Then came the letter that turned my world upside down. It was a crisp February morning when a certified envelope arrived at my doorstep, its official seal glaring like a warning. I assumed it was a work contract or tax form, but as I tore it open, my breath caught. My parents, Linda and Mark Bennett, were suing me for $380,000. The claim? Reimbursement for expenses incurred raising Claire Bennett, including food, housing, clothing, and emotional support, from age 0 to 18. They listed everything: $200 for my kindergarten backpack, $1,500 for a 1999 family trip to Wisconsin Dells, even $300 for counseling during my defiant middle school years, aka arguing over a 10 p.m. curfew. The final line was the gut punch: funds to secure Vanessa Bennett's mortgage for the stability of her minor children. They weren't hiding it. This was about forcing me to pay for Vanessa's house, dressed up as a twisted debt for my childhood. I sat on my couch, the Chicago skyline gray through my window, and laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. My parents were suing me for being their daughter. The betrayal burned deeper than any family argument. I called the best lawyer I could find, Rachel Harper, a sharp Chicago attorney with a reputation for shredding frivolous claims. She met me in her sleek Michigan Avenue office, her glasses low on her nose. "This is garbage," she said, flipping through the complaint. "Parents have a legal duty to raise their kids, no court expects repayment. They're trying to scare you into paying Vanessa's mortgage." I nodded, my throat tight. "Why do this?" I asked. Rachel shrugged. "Guilt, delusion, or desperation? Maybe all three." For weeks, I became a detective in my own life, digging through bank statements and emails to prove I wasn't the ungrateful daughter they painted. I found records of $15,000 for Vanessa's lawyer, $19,200 for her rent, $2,500 for her car, $1,800 for Mom's dental work in 2021, $2,000 for Dad's truck repair in 2023. Every receipt was a memory I didn't want: late nights balancing my budget, skipping vacations to help them. I pulled text messages from Mom: "Claire, just $500 for the electric bill, please?" I even found an email from Vanessa thanking me for the kids' Six Flags trip, proof I'd been there for Ethan and Mia. By the time I was done, I had a binder thick enough to choke a judge. The trial was set for a chilly March morning in a Cook County courthouse, a stark building with fluorescent lights and scuffed linoleum floors. I wore a navy blazer and slacks, my hands clammy as I clutched my evidence binder. My grandparents, Walter and Betty, sat behind me, their presence a quiet rebellion against their daughter, Linda. They'd driven from their condo in Skokie, their faces etched with sorrow but resolve. "This isn't right, Claire, Grandma," Betty whispered, squeezing my hand. Across the aisle, Mom, Dad, and Vanessa sat with Aunt Susan and Uncle Dave, their eyes avoiding mine. Vanessa looked pale, her hands twisting a tissue. The gallery held more: cousins, family friends, even Kelly, Vanessa's Instagram friend, glaring like I'd stolen her soul. The judge, a no-nonsense woman in her 60s with steel gray hair, entered, her gavel cracking like a gunshot. Dad took the stand first, his voice steady but rehearsed. "Your Honor, we're not greedy. We poured our lives into Claire, private tutors, dance lessons, a safe home. We're just asking her to help her sister, who's struggling as a single mom." The judge's face was unreadable, her pen scratching notes. "Specifically," she said, "did you pay for Claire's college?" Dad shifted. "Well, Vanessa was getting married then. We helped with her wedding." The judge raised an eyebrow. "So, you didn't fund Claire's education?" Mom jumped in, flustered. "My mother, Betty, paid her tuition, but since she's my mom, that's basically us." Grandma Betty let out a soft scoff behind me, and I bit my lip to keep from smiling. Rachel stood, calm and lethal. "Your Honor, Claire has been financially independent since 18. She's also provided $36,700 to her family, $15,000 for Vanessa's divorce, $19,200 for rent, $2,500 for her car, plus thousands to her parents." She handed over my binder, pages tabbed and highlighted. Claire wasn't receiving support, she was giving it. The judge flipped through, her glasses glinting. "So, the defendant was the family's benefactor, not a burden. Correct?" Rachel nodded. "Exactly." Mom squirmed, her voice shrill. "That's not the point. We're talking about raising her, diapers, doctor visits, love." The judge cut her off. "Why do you need $380,000 now?" Mom hesitated, glancing at Vanessa. "To pay Vanessa's mortgage," she mumbled. The room went silent, even Uncle Dave shifting uncomfortably. The judge turned to Vanessa, her tone sharp. "Ms. Bennett, do you believe your sister owes you this house?" Vanessa's voice cracked, her eyes on the floor. "She's got no kids, no responsibilities. I'm barely surviving." The judge leaned forward. "I'm single and childless. Should I pay your mortgage? Or my bailiff's?" Vanessa blinked, speechless. A nervous chuckle rippled through the courtroom. The judge's questions grew relentless. Why assume Claire's savings were theirs? Why buy a $950,000 house Vanessa couldn't afford? Why sue their own daughter? Dad stammered about family values, Mom rambled about sacrifice, but their answers collapsed like a house of cards. Rachel's evidence, bank transfers, receipts, texts, painted a clear picture. I'd been their safety net, not their debtor. As the session ended, Grandma Betty squeezed my shoulder. "You're stronger than they are," she whispered. I wasn't sure. The courtroom felt like a crucible, and I was still burning. But the worst was yet to come. The verdict loomed, and with it, a question I couldn't shake: would justice free me, or would my family's betrayal break me first? The Cook County courthouse felt smaller when I returned for the verdict, as if the walls had shrunk under the weight of my family's betrayal. A week had passed since the trial, where my parents, Linda and Mark Bennett, sued me for $380,000, claiming I owed them for raising me, to force me to pay Vanessa's $5,500 a month mortgage on a $950,000 Wilmette house. I'd shown the judge my sacrifices: $15,000 for Vanessa's divorce lawyer, $19,200 for her Cicero apartment rent, $2,500 for her car, $3,800 for my parents' bills over the years. My lawyer, Rachel Harper, had dismantled their case, exposing their manipulation. But as I sat in the courtroom, my grandparents, Walter and Betty, behind me, my heart still raced. Mom, Dad, and Vanessa sat across the aisle, their faces unreadable. I didn't want revenge, just freedom. The judge, her steel gray hair catching the light, entered with a no-nonsense stride. Her gavel cracked, and the room fell silent. After reviewing the evidence, she began, her voice clear: "I find the plaintiff's claim wholly without merit. Parents are legally obligated to provide for their children, with no expectation of repayment. She adjusted her glasses, her gaze piercing. The evidence shows Claire Bennett has provided substantial support, $36,700 to her sister and parents, including rent, legal fees, and other expenses. She owes nothing. She paused, her tone hardening. Mr. and Mrs. Bennett, your attempt to exploit your daughter's success to fund your other daughter's lifestyle is manipulative and, frankly, deplorable. Case dismissed. The word dismissed hit like a gust of fresh air. Grandma Betty squeezed my hand, her eyes misty. Grandpa Walter whispered, "You're done, kid." Rachel gave me a small, triumphant nod. I didn't cheer or cry, I just sat there, feeling the weight of years lift, replaced by a strange, fragile relief. Across the aisle, Mom's face crumpled, Dad stared at the floor, and Vanessa clutched her tissue, still avoiding my eyes. Aunt Susan and Uncle Dave slipped out. Quietly, their earlier glares gone. The courtroom emptied, but I lingered, needing to feel the moment. I'd won, but it didn't feel like victory, it felt like survival. Outside, under a gray Chicago sky, Grandma Betty hugged me tightly. "You stood your ground, Claire. That's more than they can say." I nodded, my throat tight. "What now?" I asked, more to myself than her. She smiled sadly. "You live. You build what's yours." Her words stuck with me as I drove back to my apartment, the city's skyline a quiet promise of something new. The weeks that followed were a deliberate reclaiming of my life. I'd been saving for a Wicker Park condo, but after the trial, I wanted something simpler, something mine. I found a small 2-bedroom bungalow in Logan Square, $320,000, with a front porch and a tiny backyard. I closed on it in April, painting the kitchen sage green and planting sunflowers along the fence. I adopted a scruffy rescue dog, Milo, who curled up by my desk while I worked. The house smelled of coffee and fresh paint, and for the first time in years, I slept without checking my phone for angry texts. My family didn't stop. A month after the verdict, Mom sent a letter, no email, just old-school stationery, her handwriting shaky. "Claire, we heard about your new house. It's got space, so Vanessa and the kids should move in. It'd be better for Ethan and Mia to be with you. Let us know when they can come." I read it twice, my pulse steady. This wasn't a request, it was another demand, cloaked in fake concern. I typed a reply on my laptop: "I will not be housing Vanessa or her children. Do not contact me again. Further attempts will be reported as harassment." I mailed it, blocked their numbers, and poured myself a glass of Pinot Noir. Milo nudged my leg, and I scratched his ears, the silence of my bungalow louder than any courtroom. Vanessa sold the Wilmette house, unable to keep up with the mortgage. She and the kids moved into a modest apartment in Berwyn, a working-class suburb. Mom babysat Ethan and Mia while Vanessa picked up more hours at the preschool. I heard through Grandma Betty that they were getting by, but barely. Dad took a part-time job at a hardware store to cover their own bills. The family narrative didn't change. Mom still told relatives I'd abandoned Vanessa, painting. Me as the cold, career-obsessed daughter. But the tide was shifting. Aunt Susan, once a vocal critic, told Mom to drop it at a family picnic. "Nobody cares anymore, Linda," she said, per Grandma's retelling. I smiled when I heard that. A small spark of vindication. Grandma Betty and Grandpa Walter became my anchors. They'd visit my bungalow, bringing homemade apple pie or clippings from their Skokie garden. Grandpa fixed my leaky faucet. Grandma nagged me to double-lock my doors, even with Milo's bark as backup. We'd sit on the porch, sipping lemonade, talking about everything but my parents. Once, Grandma mentioned Mom had asked them for an early inheritance to help Vanessa. They refused, saying their will was their choice. Mom cried. Grandma said, "Not for me, but for the money." That hurt more than I expected. I started dating a guy named Ryan, a graphic designer with a warm laugh and a love for hiking. He didn't pry about my family, and I didn't offer. The ache of what could have been lingered, parents who saw me, a sister who fought for me, but it faded with time. I'd catch myself staring at the sunflowers in my yard, Milo chasing squirrels, and feel something new, peace. Not the kind you're given, but the kind you earned. A year later, I got a text from an unknown number. It was Mia, Vanessa's daughter, now 11. "Aunt Claire, can I see you? Mom doesn't know I'm texting." My heart skipped. I didn't reply right away. unsure if it was a trap or a genuine reach. I saved the message, promising myself I'd think it over. For now, my bungalow was my fortress, my life my own. The trial had freed me, but this new contact opened a door I wasn't sure I was ready to walk through. What did Mia want? And could I face my family's shadow again? The sun was setting over my Logan Square bungalow, painting the Chicago sky in hues of orange and pink. I sat on my front porch, a mug of chamomile tea warming my hands. Milo, my rescue dog, sprawled at my feet. The sunflowers I'd planted last spring swayed in the breeze, their golden petals a quiet reminder of the life I'd built after the storm. It had been over a year since the trial, where my parents, Linda and Mark Bennett, sued me for $380,000, claiming I owed them for raising me, to force me to pay Vanessa's $5,500 a month mortgage on a $950,000 Wilmette house. I'd fought back, proving I'd already given $15,000 for her divorce lawyer, $19,200 for her Cicero apartment rent, $2,500 for her car, and more. The judge dismissed their case, calling their actions deplorable. That victory wasn't just legal, it was the moment I reclaimed my life. The aftermath wasn't easy, but it was mine. My bungalow, with its sage green kitchen and creaky hardwood floors, became my haven. I'd traded my dream of a flashy Wicker Park condo for this $320,000 slice of peace, and it was worth every penny. Milo's snores, the smell of fresh coffee, the way the morning light hit my sunflowers, these were my anchors. I'd cut contact with my parents after their final demand that Vanessa and her kids, Ethan and Mia, move into my home. My response, "Do not contact me again," was a line in the sand, and I hadn't heard from them since. Vanessa sold the Wilmette house, renting a small place in Berwyn. She worked longer hours at the preschool, and Mom babysat the kids. They were surviving, Grandma Betty told me, but the family rift remained. Grandma Betty and Grandpa Walter were my lifelines. They'd visit every few weeks, bringing blueberry muffins or old Polaroids from their Skokie attic. Grandpa would tinker with my porch light, Grandma would fuss about my thin curtains, insisting I needed proper ones for safety. We'd laugh over lemonade, their stories of 1960s Chicago filling the air. They never pushed me to reconcile with my parents, though Grandma once said, "Your mom's still telling folks you walked out on Vanessa." I shrugged. Let her. The sting had faded. Aunt Susan, who'd once called me selfish, had stopped Mom's rants at a family barbecue, saying, "Linda, it's done. Move on." That shift, small as it was, felt like a nod from the universe. I wasn't the villain anymore. I'd started seeing Ryan, the graphic designer, with a quick smile and a love for craft beer. He'd join me and Milo for walks along the 606 trail, never asking about the family I rarely mentioned. When I finally told him about the lawsuit, he listened, then said, "You're tougher than you look, Claire." It was the kind of quiet support I'd craved my whole life. The ache for my parents' approval still lingered sometimes, like a bruise that only hurts when pressed. I'd wonder what Ethan and Mia thought of me, if Vanessa had spun lies about their heartless aunt. Mia's text, "Aunt Claire, can I see you?" sat unanswered in my phone. I wanted to reply, but trust was a fragile thing, and I wasn't ready to risk my peace. Not yet. This journey taught me a lesson I'll carry forever. Love doesn't mean surrendering your life to others' demands. My parents and Vanessa saw my success, my tech job, my savings, as theirs to claim because I was single, childless, free. But freedom isn't an invitation to be exploited. Saying no to their $66,000 a year mortgage demand wasn't selfish, it was survival. Setting boundaries, even with family, is an act of strength, not betrayal. I learned to protect my mental health, my finances, and my dreams, like that Logan Square bungalow I'd earned through years of sacrifice. The real takeaway? Surround yourself with people who lift you up, not drag you down. Grandma Betty and Grandpa Walter showed me what family could be, supportive, not suffocating. Ryan's quiet presence reminded me that love doesn't come with a ledger. And Milo, my scruffy dog, taught me that loyalty can be as simple as a wagging tail. If someone, family or not, expects you to dim your light to brighten theirs, walk away. Guilt is a trap, and you don't owe anyone your future. As I sipped my tea, the Chicago skyline twinkling in the distance, I felt a calm I'd fought hard for. My parents might never see me as enough. Vanessa might never thank me for the $36,700 I gave. But I was enough for me. My bungalow, my dog, my sunflowers, they were proof of a life I'd built, not inherited. Mia's text lingered, a question mark in my heart. Maybe one day I'd answer. For now, I was home, and that was more than enough. So, to anyone listening, protect your peace. It's not given, it's earned.